So my top 3 today is not really a top 3. It's a top 8. But I'll have a lot of people on the 3rd position and then 2 ones for the number 2 and the number 1. And actually, I was curious because some weeks ago, GWI made an article where Christopher Gasson apologized. He said,
I read this.
I have been negative about the merger between Veolia and Suez, and I thought it wouldn't create value. And I even recorded him on my podcast. I asked him, why do you think they did it? And he told me,
because it could. Because it could.
He didn't really believe at that time. And I think I wouldn't blame him because I'm still not a believer of that merger. Nothing against it, but nothing in favor of it, just because I still haven't gotten the point. But that's not the heart of my top 3 or 8 today. The heart of it is there were some executives at Suez which were really against the merger. And some left during the process, some left as soon as the process were over, some others were thought to maybe take the lead of Suez and then didn't take the lead of Suez and then left the company. I was a bit curious to look, what are they up to these days? What do they do? What is their life now that they left the second largest water company at the time they left? And you'll see that it's interesting because they have very different paths, but there is one thing in common, which is that many of them weren't really ready to jump into the next venture. And so they changed a bit what they're doing. So my first here, and I have to cheat and to look at my note, is going to be Christophe Cros. Christophe Cros was the boss of Suez WTS. Suez WTS was the entity created when Suez acquired GE Water.
What does it mean, boss?
Was the CEO.
Okay.
I guess there are many CEOs in this kind of group. So he was leading this
department.
Suez WTS used to be a 3 billion business. So for many companies, that would be the CEO. For Suez, it was the CEO of one of the important divisions, maybe arguably the one that Veolia wanted to take over. The problem is that when Veolia took over Suez, this Suez WTS got integrated into what's called nowadays Veolia Water Treatment Solutions. So it was the former Veolia Water Technologies, which is then merged with Suez WTS and put together. And when you're putting together 2 organizations like that, well, you can have only one boss.
Only one can survive.
Christophe Cros left the Suez group the same time then Bertrand Camus, the former CEO, left the group. What he's doing these days is that he's created his freelance boutique.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
I couldn't find a track of that company outside of what he's putting on LinkedIn. The company is called Watcher. I don't know what he's watching, but I'd be watching what he's doing with Watcher. So Christophe, if you're watching that, it'd be really interesting to get to know a bit better what you're doing.
Quite often it is that, let's say that you take the freelance period just to figure out, okay, what should be my next step? Do I really want, after so many years in a big corporate, do I just want to go directly into the next corporate or startup company, or maybe there's something else?
What shall I do now? What shall I do?
Use the time for orientation, which is fair, right?
Absolutely. Along the same lines, we have David Palmer-Jones. David Palmer-Jones used to be the CEO of Suez Resource and Recycling in the UK. And then he became the CEO of Suez Resource and Recycling for the entire Europe. That used to be called CETA, the waste part of Suez. He left with the merger and he's now an independent consultant, but in that business of staying with the resource recovery and the waste side of things. On the same level, I have Diane Galbe. Diane Galbe used to be the CEO of New Businesses. She left a bit later because she left in April 2022. So she left when Sabrina Soussan took over. She used to be the person at Suez in charge of Vision 2030. Prior to the merger,
once upon a time, a long time ago,
Suez had a vision which was catered to please the private sector and to do a rotation of assets and turn a bit the company on its head. It was a pretty ambitious vision. And all the time of the merger discussion, Suez kept saying, we don't need that merger because we have our Vision 2030. So it sounds about logic that the person which was instrumental in building that Vision 2030 wasn't that pleased with the fact that obviously the vision wouldn't be enforced.
Tell them the dream is over.
She left the company and today she's working for Atos. Atos is a French giant in the sector of cybersecurity, data centers, supercalculators, and she's one of the 3 heads of Atos. So pretty impressive development. I think Atos is a 111,000 people business. So she jumped right ahead into the next opportunity and it sounds to be a cool one. Still on my 3rd position in my podium.
It's crowded there.
Tiffen Hecketsweiler.
It's Dutch, is it?
It sounds maybe from my region. Maybe she's Alsatian. I don't know. Tiffen, if you watch this, I'd be curious to get to know you because actually, how would you define the merger between Suez and Veolia?
Interesting.
No, the reason I'm asking is that it sounds to me in her new job that she learned a lot during that stage, because she used to be the chief communication officer. All of these persons were part of the board of Suez. She was the person talking to the press and expressing what was happening and being positive when it had to be, negative when it had to be. And what is this special art of communication?
Tell me.
Crisis management.
Now she has a job
I
in
guess
crisis
she
management.
practiced
Okay.
crisis management, and now she created her business in crisis management and strategic communication. So when you put that on your resume, what's your experience with crisis management? Well, I was leading the communication of the number 2 in the world, and we got acquired in a hostile manner by number 1 in the world. You hardly make a better resume. I'm sorry, that's really cool. Still on my third position in my podium, Anna Giros. Anna Giros used to be the CEO Latin America of Suez, and then she was the CEO of Suez International until July
A lot of
2022.
CEOs, huh?
July 2022. If you recall the rest of the timelines, she was the last to leave, because actually she was one of the persons which were rumored to maybe take over the new Suez. And when Sabrina Soussan got appointed, she said she's fully fine with her job and she stayed within her position. And some months later, she still left. You could imagine that there were some tensions.
That is pure speculation, Your Honor.
Despite the fact that Maximilian Pellegrini is still there and he was also rumored to be
Yeah.
someone to take over. So maybe I'm fully extrapolating here, except that in between, Maximilian Pellegrini also left to join Atalian. So yes, the last of the Mohicans is gone. Nowadays, she's Deputy General Director at Equans, which is part of the Bouygues Group and which is active in, let's make it simple, facility management. Last person on my third position in that top, Jean-Marc Boursier. Jean-Marc Boursier used to be the COO of Suez. Today, he became an investor. He's working for Antin. Antin was rumored to be the white knight that could save Suez from the hostile merger.
Colonel, I'm here to save you, you great white obsolete whale.
So maybe he also established some link during that period. Now he's an advisor there. And he also created his own boutique investment called Alpa. It must be something like more personal investments than on the big scheme. So that's my level 3. We move to number 2 in the podium, and actually the person on that place had to be Bertrand Camus. Bertrand Camus was the CEO of Suez. He took over from Jean-Louis Chaussade in 2019, so he stayed the top dog in Suez for 3 years until the merger. He was on the verge of maybe making an historic move with his Vision 2030, and then big drama, the merger, he was against it.
If we lose this battle, that's the end of the world as we know it.
He fighted it as much as he could, and pretty logically, he felt he wasn't the right person to take over the new Suez, and he wanted to move to new endeavors. And I was curious about those new endeavors because I've heard many things, many rumors, because Bertrand Camus actually was very silent.
I'm hiding from the world for a day.
I think he made like an overdose of media attention once the story was over. And nowadays, it's pretty difficult to find an interview of him or anything online, which makes me think that maybe, if you have some time, Bertrand, that's really a story I'd like to visit
Maybe
with you.
he's just enjoying the life now.
I guess so.
Hope so.
The first thing he did after leaving Suez is that he took a board membership on one company which one day made it to one of my top 3, a Norwegian company which is doing desalination in deep sea water.
We have talked about this.
And he took a board member position in Waterrise, so that's the name of the company. And I'm pretty curious because that company as well is pretty silent since they made the first announcement that they have been able to make it.
Yeah.
So, and then he also joined Summa Equity. Summa Equity is an impact investor with $4 billion of assets. Summa has different offices. They also have a satellite office in Norway. And as I see that Waterrise is in Norway as well, I would expect him now to be living in Norway. I'd really love to hear, now that it's settled down, from the inside, what he thought of that full story.
Maybe he's writing a book.
What I'm thinking as well is that he might have signed a lot of paper who prevent him from speaking a lot
Exactly.
about Operation Vivaldi.
If you take the package, you sign, okay, I don't blame about that. I don't talk about details. I don't talk about numbers. It's common practice. Come on.
But I would be, not so much curious about the facts, because the facts are known.
Well, but there are so many details we haven't seen.
Yeah, sure. It would make a good book. I agree with you. Maybe it even makes a good movie. You don't know. What I would love to see is the human side of that. How violent is it?
It is pretty hard for people if you fight such a hard fight and then you lose. You you really give everything, you have to step back, you have to relax for a while to digest what happened. And then maybe you get the energy back and then you can start to new things.
I would be interested to dive into that. I put that as number 2. My number 1 is Gabriel Tofani. Gabriel Tofani is the reason why I decided to do that top 3 who turned out to be a top 8. Because I was looking around in the topic of lithium and direct lithium extraction, and I stumbled upon several projects and several companies which used to have partnership with Suez at a certain point in time. And I thought, yeah, that's interesting because Suez has a membrane business and is around, so it makes about sense that they are into this direct lithium extraction. And then I looked up a company called Adionix. It's a French company who does direct lithium extraction systems. They leverage a technology which is based on an adsorbent, which they then backwash with, I guess, acid. And I wanted to reach out to them. I saw that the CEO is a former Suez guy. Actually, Gabriel Tofani used to be the CEO Latin America for De Gremont. He used to be the CEO Latin America for the international division of Suez, and he was the senior VP of global projects until he left Suez in March 2022, so shortly around the time where Sabrina Soussan took over. And he became the CEO of Adionix. And I've been talking with water professionals, which I've seen active in the field of lithium, and I've asked them, why do you go into that? And they said, we're sick and tired of the 3 to 4% profit margin business, which is the common water business. We also want to go into the 30 or 40% profit margin business, which is the direct lithium extraction. And so I found one of the former Suez executives which went down that route. I found it interesting to find that link between the water word and this resource recovery word from a watery resource.
Beside all the names, you know what I would be interested in? How is the culture today of the new Veolia Lewis? We have 2 new female leadership positions. And then there was a mix between Suez and Veolia management. People left, new people came on board.
Are you staying, or you just passing through, or what's your story?
But how really is the culture today? That I would be really interesting to hear from both ends.
I think that's a very good question. I don't have enough meat on the bone yet to give you everything I'm collecting on that because I'm investigating. What I can tell you is that there have been some press noises, the insider press.
Yeah.
The type of press which you ring directly knowing the name of the person. So it's the kind of news which is pretty often serious. There have been noises around some cultural clashes, not within the merged one, within the new Suez.
Yeah. I mean, they have to find their own personality again.
Yeah.
Right. And that is pretty hard as well.
The numbers look good. That's what Christopher Gasson shared. Kudos to them for the numbers. But from the internal perspective, I won't say much more because I want to double check everything I'm saying in that field.
But that would be pretty interesting. I mean, 2 months ago, we had again the World Women's Day. And everybody, you could see that on LinkedIn, was saying, hey, these are our women. And yeah, we celebrate that. If you have 2 established companies like Veolia and Suez, and then you merge them, and then you exchange the head from male to female, totally the culture, I'm pretty sure, has changed dramatically. I'm not judging whether to the better or the worse. I'm not saying that. I'm just curious what has really changed. So if you investigate in that, you have a job for the next water show.
You're a new CEO entering from a different business. I mean, Sabrina Soussan is coming fully from outside. I'm going to put somewhere here just the video I did about the path of Sabrina Soussan and Estelle Brachtenhoff. It's not a shameless plug. It's just because I think it gives a bit of context.
It is always a shameless plug.
It is always a shameless plug.
I have seen this 2 times in my career that, let's say, you have appointed a new CEO and the new CEO is cleaning up the floor because the former CEO, most probably, there was a fight to take that over. And then a new CEO is coming. And then you have the team, which was for the former CEO. It takes half a year, or how long ever. And then the floor is cleaned with new people in that position. I've seen this 2 times, and I'm not sure whether it's a good or bad thing. Sometimes it will work, sometimes most probably not, but it is also a common practice.
True.
You can clean up the floor by yourself, right? If you just go, okay, I want you to leave, here's a package, just go. Or the people from their own intention, they just leave because they say, hey, I don't want to go in that direction. I was with the other, and now this direction. Pretty fine, I think, is no one to blame about.
I think it leads us into 2 potential sequels. What happens when a water company is turned its head? We've seen that several times. So that's one thing. And maybe I'll come back next month. I have no clue because I need to find some stuff. So maybe it's not next month, maybe it's in 2 months or in 3 months or whenever I find stuff with the 3 weird rumors about the new Suez, which I could prove right or wrong.